Welcome, everybody. So I'm here today to talk to you about how words have power. And as she had asked earlier, we all have had a word that was powerful to us. So by the show of hands, how many of you here have a word that was so offensive to you that it can change your mood like that? We're going to call that the don't go there word, right? You see, I got a word like that as well. And that word for me is the word bitch. Now, by definition, it's affectionately known as a female dog, right? Man's best friend. But for me, as a child, it came to me in a different way. So let me tell you a little bit about my story, if you don't mind. So I was born in a small town called Bedford, England. And by the time I was 3 years old, my mother had met and married my stepfather. He was in the United States Air Force. And it wasn't long after that, he was assigned to come back to the United States. And ultimately, we ended in Las Vegas at the Nellis Air Force Base. Now, my mother, who was born in Jamaica, had always dreamt of living in Las Vegas. She had seen it on television, all the glitz and the glamour. But when we came to the United States of America, her dream was tragically more of a nightmare. And that was due to domestic violence, homelessness, and the suicide of my stepfather by the time I was 10 years old. You see, it was in that time during my life that we were placed in a homeless shelter for battered women and children. And then we were ultimately placed on government-assisted housing. It was in those neighborhoods in which I saw men call women bitches. They used the word to demean a woman and demise her. It was a word I saw a man use when he put his hands to a woman's face. So you know what I told myself? I said, when I grow up, I'm not gonna be anybody's bitch. And I was on a mission. I worked hard, I had this chip on my shoulder. No boys could talk to me about nothing. But somehow, by the time I was 16 years old, I was pregnant. And at 17, I had become a mother. Now, the funny thing is, my mom had always told me, stay away from the boys. If you kiss a boy, you're gonna get pregnant. So when I got home to tell my mom I was pregnant, I was so scared, and the only thing I could say to her is, I didn't kiss him. Ladies, you gotta be very specific when you talk to your kids, okay? But nonetheless, I didn't want my mother to feel responsible for the choices that I had made, so I left home to take care of my son. I graduated from high school, and I decided that I was going to go to school to become a paramedic. So I worked full-time in a hotel as a hotel operator, became a paramedic. I worked as an EMT part-time, and while I did that, I worked tirelessly to build myself up in the corporate ladder. Ultimately, I landed a top executive position in a Fortune 500 casino. I was top of my game, I was young, I was female. And then I decided to open up a coaching business. When my son graduated from high school, I was blessed enough to pay for him to go to college. So here I was, strong, seemingly successful, and can you believe they called me a bitch anyway? Now how does that happen? See, it wasn't just from the haters that I was called a bitch. I could handle that, because I was redefining the word anyway. It wasn't from other women, because you know us ladies can be very hard on one another. The place that I heard the word the hardest, the sharpest, and the loudest was in my very own home, by my very own husband. So how could this be that I was this strong woman, and yet I ended up being called a bitch anyway? You see, what I realized was that the woman I had become had took ownership of the word so she could redefine it. But the little girl that was inside of me, unhealed, she had made a declaration that she wasn't going to be nobody's bitch. So inside of me, there was conflict. And so ultimately, I realized that I was dealing with my own BS. And what I mean by that is my belief system. So, enough was enough. And during this breakdown in my life is when I had my breakthrough. And I'd like to share that with you guys, if you don't mind. But before I do, I ask all of you to do me one favor. Just close your eyes for a second. And I want you to visualize a color. Let's say the color blue. Any shade of blue that you can think of. Sky blue, dark blue, turquoise, any shade of blue. Now I want you to open your eyes and look around the room and tell me if you see the color blue. Now most of the color in here is purple, so we probably noticed it, but now blue stands out, right? But the reason why it stands out is not because the color wasn't there all along, it's just because I activated something in your mind to get you to notice the color. So for me, that activation thing is called the reticular activation system, and some of you actually may be familiar with that. But for simplicity, it's something that connects the conscious mind with your subconscious mind. So let me explain a little bit about this, and this is important. So your conscious mind is your cognitive mind. It is what thinks, it is what has words, it is what has thoughts, it is your emotion. It uses language to create that emotion. So for today, we'll call our conscious mind the captain, it's in charge. Now the subconscious mind is our primitive mind. It's the mind that we used when we were cave people. It's a survival mind, the flight or fight. It does not know language. It cannot use words. It doesn't think, it just feels. It's our intuition. Now, the capacity of the subconscious mind is limitless, where our conscious mind is limited. And so the subconscious mind, because it is our survival brain, takes in all the information that we collect without us even knowing, and it puts it into two boxes: problems and solutions. We're going to call that the crew, okay? So when I was going through my situation, and I decided that the pain was so bad that I had to get away. You see, as I was moving up in success, my ex-husband decided that he wanted to belittle and manipulate me because he wanted me to dim my light. And it got so bad that I had to go, I had to walk away. And I told myself I was depressed, I was ashamed, I was embarrassed, but I was determined, I had always been determined, and I was gonna fix me. So what I decided to do was read some books on my problems. I found a bunch of sermons that talked about my problems, spoke to counselors about my problems, and I couldn't understand why I had got more and more depressed. I couldn't understand, how did I get here, and why can't I just let go? And so I got rid of everything, the books, the sermons. The only thing that I had left in me was prayer, so I could just listen. I needed to be still for a while, and I took a long while. And then one day I woke up and I felt a little bit better and a little bit stronger. And I told myself, today I am healed, today I am powerful, today I'm okay. And coincidentally, I stumbled across one of the books I had read before. And as I'm reading through the book, I saw a chapter on healing. And I was so confused because I didn't remember seeing that in the book the last time I had read it. Was it always there? And then I realized I had given a command when I first was going through my situation. Captain said, I'm depressed. Aye, aye, Captain. I'm sad. Aye, aye, Captain. So when the crew was given the command, I went looking for the answers. I needed it to tie into my belief system, and my belief system at that time was that I was a broken person. On this day, it was different, because now I had decided I was healed. Aye, aye, Captain. So when I read the book, the healing stood out, no different than the color blue. So once I realized, it's like I got really excited, right? Because now I'm like, that looming question over my head, how did I get here? How come I couldn't let go? And so I started to think about the biggest fight my ex-husband and I had. And it was when he called me a bitch. And I started thinking about it. Well, bitch for me as a little girl was said by men. And I needed to understand how I saw men. What was my BS about men, my belief system? And it was going to start with the first two influential men of my life, which was my stepfather and my biological father. You see, my stepfather, for me, he was so much fun. He was a great man. My mother and him had separated, and he would come pick us up on the weekends, and we would go and play. He was a strong man. But I mentioned that my mother and him were separated. And the reason why they were separated is because he used to beat her. And I remember one time he took my mom to the desert with me, and he beat her so bad and left her there, and I thought my mom was dead. But you see, my stepdad was my hero. He was her villain, conflict. And I remember before he died, I had a dream that he had died. And I said to my dad, who I called Dad, Daddy, I had a dream that you died. And he said to me, baby girl, you're so pretty. I'm not going nowhere. When you get older, I gotta beat up all those boys and keep them away from you. And then he took me to the park, and he used to take me on this swing and swimming high up in the air and run underneath. And this time, he didn't run fast enough, and I kicked him. And he fell. And I thought, oh my God, I hurt my dad. And he laughed. He said, it's okay. It was an accident, baby. But by the next weekend, he had taken his life. Now, my stepfather, that guy, he was so nice. He was so nice. So nice, in fact, that when my mother had met my stepfather and fell in love and left to another country, he didn't even fight to keep me. And when I got to this country, he never fought to come and see me. And when I used to write my daddy letters, it was only addressed by his first name. And he never fought for his title. So what was my belief system about men? Well, if they're weak, they won't fight for you. If they're strong, they'll beat you, but they'll be your hero. And they will promise to protect you, but abandon you. And when they do, you will blame yourself. So ladies and gentlemen, when I was ready to be a wife, aye, Captain, the crew went looking for my man. But my man was based on my belief system. So when I met this ex-husband of mine, he was just very familiar. And it was in that moment that I realized the change has to start here. I have to change what I believed about men, most importantly because I was raising one. At some point, I left. I became stronger. But here's the thing. We're here today to talk about a very important cause, domestic abuse and violence. But we can provide resources and get a person out of a situation. But if you don't change your belief system about who you are and what you deserve in your life, you'll end up with a different person, same situation, different name. And this doesn't just apply to violence and abuse. This applies to your belief system in every aspect of your life. Where you don't feel fulfilled, it's your belief system. Where you are fulfilled, that's your belief system too. So I want to ask you guys 3 things. The first thing is, what are your words? Are you stupid? Do you not belong? Will you never be enough? What are your words? Number 2, how do those words tie into your belief system? Who told you those words? And then what did you tell yourself? My third thing I'm going to ask you guys is, what are you going to do about it? So before I go, I'd like you guys to close your eyes one more time for me. Only this time, I want you to put your hand over your heart and just take a moment to feel your heartbeat. You see, your heart is the Alpha Omega that lives inside of you. It was the first sign of life before you even thought a word. It will be the deciding factor when your life ends. And as you feel your heartbeat, I want you to pick a color. Think of that color and every shade that that color comes in. Think of the abundance of that color and beat that color into your heart. And when you do that, I want you to think of your new words. That you're beautiful, that you're relevant, that you're powerful, that you're enough. Think of your color, feel your heartbeat. Now open your eyes and look around and see if you see that color. Because that color was in this room all along as well. And when you go out in life, I want you to look around and see your color and think of the words that empower you. And be reminded that you don't have to live in your own BS. You can change it. Thank you, guys.